Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to interrupt real quick before the start of the episode to let you know about an upcoming event that Partners in Crime Book Tours is holding, where TG and I will be presenting 10 ways to make your mystery mediocre. With years of listening to a wide range of whodunit style stories, we've combined the 10 biggest ways whodunit mysteries miss the mark and lose interest. If you're interested, you can tune in on June 11th at 6 o'clock Eastern Time on Facebook or YouTube. You can also register for a spot on the Zoom call if you're interested in interacting with us and asking questions. Links to these meets are in the show notes. I hope to see you there.
Mysteries to Die For welcomes Jason Little back to the morgue. Jason is a versatile fiction author, crafting tales that span the genres of horror, science fiction, and suspense. He creates 100% human-written horror stories for TikTok at Flash Frights Official and on Patreon at From the Fright Vault. This marks Jason's third contribution to Mysteries to Die For, where he dedicated himself to the grind of devising stuff that can kill you. Discover more of Jason's work at jasonlittlewriting.com. Welcome to Mysteries to Die For. I am TG Wolff, and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. All stories are structured to challenge you to beat the detective to the solution. Jack and I perform these live, front to back, no breaks, no fakes, no retakes. In the world's most dangerous working environments, it can seem like everything is out to kill you. The equipment you use, the materials you work with, the very air you breathe. Stored energy is a coiled viper waiting for the right moment to lash out. Owners, manufacturers, and contractors and beyond have developed safety protocols to combat sticky. That is, stuff that can kill you. Gravity, motion, mechanical, electrical, pressure, sound, radiation, biological, chemical, temperature. This season is all about the means of murder, as our authors put our sticky detective skills to the test. This is Season 9, Stuff That Can Kill You. And this is Episode 10b, where mechanical is our sticky means of method. This is Part 2 of Finally Ground Karma by Jason Little. All right, Jack, I think last week, whatever the time frame is here, you went with the brightly sax, didn't you?
Sax.
Yeah. Should we keep it in that groove?
Well, here's the thing about that, is I don't really remember. Oh, I found it.
I don't really remember where it is.
Yeah, I don't really know where most of these sound effects on my Casio. It's not a laptop. What is this? Keyboard. Where my Casio keyboard is. So I just kind of guess most of the time.
Okay, so let's do a reset from what was for us yesterday and what was for listeners last week.
Yeah.
So Fred Bubba Fitzgerald was found dead in a slaughterhouse. His body had been processed using the same methods and equipment used on pigs. So Bubba's business was in trouble and it was shutting down. On the last day, he took 2 of his trusted employees out for a final beer. So if you remember, that was Q, who has big fuzzy black hair and a skinny body, and Little Dipper, who wears a 3XL basketball jersey. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot I was participating in this part. I was really focused on the vibe.
So Bubba caught both of them doing meth in the bathroom, kind of crashed their heads together, and then he was going to turn Q over to the cops and turn Little Dipper over to his parole officer. But as he was coming out, he ran into an ex-employee, Antonio, who was engaged in competitive arm wrestling.
Yeah.
And the 2 of them had words, though there's some controversy over what the words were.
Yes, there is. Were they naughty or nice?
Exactly.
That came out weirder than I meant it to be.
And Antonio is now engaged to Bubba's almost ex-wife. Then Bubba, Q, and Little Dipper went to visit the psychic Dahlia, who told them that his negative karma was coming to get him.
Yes.
Bubba wasn't crying over Ellie, the almost ex-wife, because he had started up a long overdue thing with Samantha Tipton, who was the business manager, secretary, HR, everything for the slaughterhouse.
Yep.
He went as far as to make her the beneficiary of his $1 million life insurance policy. So those were all of our suspects. Now we're going to pick up with Detective Pam McCarthy as she works to make sense of the whole bloody mess.
Yay.
You ready?
Yeah.
We're going to go into Copper Cove. Pam took Detective Michelle Montoya back to her car before deciding to go for a stress-relieving jog down by the crime scene. Dressed in shorts and a tank top, Pam parked her car at the Fitzgerald meatpacking plant and took off down Missile Road in the opposite direction of Dahlia's storefront. She had no desire to ever see the young lady again or hear her premonitions of how and when she might die. Pam pumped her legs and worked up a sweat as she kept her eyes trained on the road in front of her. She went over all the clues, but nothing stuck out with regards to a rock-solid evidence. Q had an hour that was unaccounted for before being placed in jail. Stewart had blood on him. Could be pig's blood, with him not accustomed to changing his clothes. Antonio was strong enough to lift Bubba, who was a big, big man. But what was his motive? Retaliation over being fired? An attempt to get Ellie's insurance money? Pam passed a rundown apartment complex. The sign read Copper Cove. The tan buildings had balconies that housed cheap tables and chairs, the occasional bicycle, and clotheslines with drying clothes. Just then, Pam noticed a familiar face. Antonio the Nomad met her gaze before ducking into the leasing office. Pam picked up her pace and reached the office door a moment later. She threw it open and sucked in the cold air conditioning while she allowed her eyes to adjust to the dim light. "Can I help you?" The young man seated behind the desk wore a green button-down and khaki pants. He looked Pam over, his eyes lingering a tad too long for her taste. Pam unzipped her fanny pack and showed her badge. She introduced herself, and the man's demeanor changed from perv to concerned citizen. "What's going on?" he asked. "Is everything okay?" "That man just in here," Pam thumbed over her shoulder. "Where did he go?" The man rocked his head up to the ceiling and groaned. "He is a pain in my ass is what he is. Frickin' gypsies." The man waved at the window that overlooked the complex. "They're all gypsies. Every gosh darn one of them." "What are you talking about?" Pam asked, her breathing finally under control. "They skipped out." "Who did?" Pam inquired. The man looked at Pam as if she wasn't playing with the full deck. "The gypsies," he enunciated as though she were deaf. "You're the manager here?" Pam asked. "Leasing agent. The manager's out visiting properties around DFW. I'm manning the ship today, and now I've got to clean up all their mess." Pam encouraged the man to calm down. When she asked for water, he retrieved a water bottle from the mini fridge. He sat at his desk and groaned for a second time. What a mess. Pam drank as she sat across from him. "Tell me what happened. Gypsies lived here?" "I don't know that they were gypsies. Not until today when I learned they all skipped out. That guy, Antonio, he arrived first with his sister last month. Then a bunch more came. And at first everything was fine. They had great credit, money to pay, and all the references checked out. Today, all the phone numbers are disconnected. Classic gypsy scam. They had me fooled big time. I've been reading all about them all afternoon on the internet. Tricksters. All of them." The man pointed to his computer and said, "Here, look." He moved his monitor so Pam could see the screen. He opened a file and showed 3 references for Antonio and Dahlia Camparilla. "I called all 3 reference numbers back when they first applied, and every single person I talked to on their behalf was professional and answered all my questions. That was so I didn't suspect a thing. That's what they do. They get their friends and family to pretend, and suddenly you're left holding the bag. 12 units, all empty as of this morning. They all skipped. Mike's gonna be pissed. At Pam's questioning look, the man said, "The manager?" The leasing agent's name turned out to be Skip Carson. Skip took Pam out on the lot where he led her to apartment 2, the closest to the road. Right away, she noticed dog kennels behind the building. As Skip was about to open the door, the detective rounded the building until he followed. She pointed to the empty kennels, around a dozen of them, all standing empty. "What's this about?" she asked. Skip peeled back his lips until his teeth showed. Somehow, Antonio and Dahlia convinced Mike to let them keep dogs on the property. I mean, we're pet friendly, but we're not supposed to allow dog breeding. But money talks, and they had plenty of it, and just like that, we became a blue heeler farm. The leasing agent sucked air through her teeth. Damn shame what happened to those dogs. When Pam asked what happened next, Skip led her through the bank of kennels with his hands in his pockets. They showed up with 2. Pretty soon we had a whole team of them, barking all day and night. Then one day, on July 4th, I'm pretty sure it was, they were all gone. Every single one. The office was closed, but I live on property. The girl came banging on my door. Dahlia is her name. She was distraught. And her boyfriend, the skinny one with the frizzy hair, even more so. They both stood on my doorstep ranting about someone stealing their dogs. Then the very next day, the 5th of July, I remember, the office reopened, and I was in there when I heard this blood-curdling scream. By this point, Skip and Pam were back in front of the apartment complex. He pointed to door number 2 and winced. Someone had left a tray of hot dogs on the mat in front of their door. They were all fixed up, mustard, ketchup, relish, and beside them, 12 dog collars. Dahlia had to be restrained. Apparently, she had raised the mom dog from a pup. The bitch. Skip shrugged. I mean, she was an okay tenant until they all skipped out yesterday. No, Pam said, I meant... She pulled her own lips back.
That was a great joke, Jason. I want to let you know that was grade A joke. Great joke. Thank you.
You suspect the hot dogs were made of real dog? Oh, yeah, Skip said. I mean, I assume that's why all the dog collars were left on the tray like that. I mean, I'm no detective, but it fits. Pam thanked Skip and asked if he knew where Antonio was now. Nope, Skip said. He eyed the office door. He came in, said hi, and ran out back. Pam uttered, He wanted me to see him. What was that? Nothing. Do you have surveillance cameras that reach out back? Sure do, Skip said. They're a multi-camera display. Captures the whole property for 30 days before the recording is rewritten. After securing the footage from Copper Cove, Pam stopped at King's Tap and was thrilled to find the manager, Bruce, also had camera footage she could have. She took this evidence back to the station and sat down to watch when Peter, her almost ex-husband, walked into the media room. Not now, she told him without looking up from the screen. Are you sure? Peter said. Because it pertains to your case. Well, this got the detective's attention. Peter took the seat beside her and produced his cell phone. After fiddling with the screen, he showed her the display. At first, Pam didn't know what she was looking at. Peter had taken a photograph of a computer screen. The green lettering was a little faded, but she managed to make out the name Manuel Aldana, Hugh, and the timestamp on his work release checkout. What on earth? Pam said. Peter nodded. Someone checked him out minutes after he was arrested, then checked him back in 2 hours later. Who did? Pam demanded. When Peter flipped to the next photo and showed her proof, Pam sat back, stunned. Her own name graced the screen. Peter put his foot away. I did some digging. Your partner? She doesn't exist. Pam righted herself and studied Peter's face, her eyes blinking. What are you talking about? There's a Michelle Montoya in Dallas, where your partner is supposed to have come from. Well, she's still there. I talked to her. Then who? Pam jumped up and ran to the chief's office, finding him typing at his computer. She plopped down in his chair and waited for him to acknowledge her. Chief Levette stopped typing and regarded her with a, "What's up?" "How did you come to hire my partner?" The chief brightened. "It's a funny story, actually. I got into this fender bender with this guy, and insurance wouldn't cover it because it was my fault. The guy ended up fixing my car for much less than an auto body would have charged. Apparently his cousin had a few years on the force in Dallas and wanted more of a small-town feel. I suggested she come over here. How's she doing?" "What's the guy's name?" Pam asked, suspecting she already knew the answer. "Antonio," Chief Levette said. "I don't remember his last name. Great guy, very charismatic. I told him he should join the force." "Fender bender," Pam muttered as she rose to her feet. "Classic gypsy scam." "What did you say?" the chief asked, but Pam had already retreated into the hall. When she returned to the media room, she found Peter still seated at the monitor. "Also," he said when she entered, "I was hoping we could talk about—" "No," Pam blurted as she retook her seat. Peter stood and retreated to the door when the detective fast-forwarded the security footage from the apartment complex and pressed pause. "There," she said, more to herself than Peter. She rewound the footage as Peter crept back into the room to peer over her shoulder. "That's Bubba's van," Pam said, pointing to the black and white display. A white van had pulled up to the dog kennels in the rear of the complex, all of them filled with blue heelers. The man was frozen on the screen, getting out of the passenger side. Pam let the video play. For the next few minutes, Bubba opened each cage and herded a different dog into the storage area of the van. "That's Bubba," she said. "But who's driving?" "Back it up," Peter said. "No shit, Sherlock," Pam uttered with contempt as she rewound the footage, paused it a second time. Antonio was driving. Standing up, Pam said, "I think I know who did this. I just have to figure out why," before running for the open doorway. All right, Jack, we've reached the deliberation on this two-parter.
That we have.
So Senior Detective Pam McCarthy...
Makes no sense, guys. This makes no sense.
Senior Detective Pam McCarthy is facing a bloody tough case. English pun fully intended. According to most, Fred Bubba Fitzgerald wasn't a good guy, but who disliked him enough to turn his trade against him? So here are the people involved in the order we met them.
I think this is the first time we've gotten to the deliberation within 17 minutes of the episode.
I know. It's because we decided to move one of the chapters.
Yeah. I don't regret it. I'm looking down at the screen. I'm like, wow, we haven't been here long.
Fast.
Yeah.
So Michelle Montoya, new detective. She's a transfer from Dallas.
Yes.
Or is she?
Or is she?
Manuel Q. Aldana, stringer at the plant and meth smoker.
Yeah.
Stuart Little Dipper Matheson, dipping pool operator and meth smoker.
Stuart Little.
That's funny. Samantha Tipton, plant HR secretary and Bubba's new girlfriend.
Yes, very interesting.
Ellie Fitzgerald, soon to be ex-wife.
Yeah.
Antonio, the former employee, Ellie's new fiance.
A strange guy all around.
And Dahlia's brother. Apparently this guy gets around.
He's a John of all trades, you
yeah.
know? I prefer not to use Jack of all trades. It's offensive towards my people.
And then Dahlia, the psychic, who's also Antonio's sister.
Yes.
All right, so here's what Pam knows, and it's a lot. It's a lot, Jack.
She knows a lot, and yet nothing at all.
Nothing. So Fred Bubba Fitzgerald was found in his meatpacking plant on Monday morning by Samantha Tipton.
Yeah.
His head was on a platter.
Yeah.
His tongue removed.
Yeah.
And his mouth filled with dog tags.
You know, it sounds like he was just ready to be eaten.
The rest of his body went through the industrial grinder.
Yummy.
Fitzgerald Meatpacking was robbed the day before the the 4th of July barbecue dubbed Bubba's Buddies.
Yeah.
The meat was to be smoked and sold at a reduced price to homeless.
But instead it was fed to the dogs.
A police report was not filed.
I called it correctly, didn't I?
Samantha said the gypsies did it. Quote,
yes,
gypsies.
of course they did.
Also on July 4th, a dozen purebreds were stolen from an apartment complex Antonio and his sister lived in.
Yeah, I guess. Uh-huh.
The next day, a platter of hot dogs was left with collars and tags.
In pure Jason form.
Bubba's van was caught on CCTV loading up the dogs, and Bubba was seen loading the dogs into the van with Antonio driving.
So that makes no sense.
Q, Little Dipper, and Dahlia all agree Bubba was alive at 3 a.m. Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Dahlia told Bubba that he would die in the same way the pigs he slaughtered and gave him a dog tag.
Yeah.
After leaving, Bubba called the police on Q and sent Little Dipper home to wait for his probation officer.
Uh-huh.
At 2:30 a.m., so a half hour earlier,
Yeah.
Bubba left Samantha a voicemail that he had done unspecified, quote, bad things and wasn't sure he was going to survive. He directed her to the location of the insurance certificate with her as the beneficiary.
Yeah, behind the TV. Stupid place to keep your financial documents, guys. Just behind there.
Another half hour earlier, 2 a.m., Q and Little Dipper were smoking meth in a bar bathroom when Bubba caught them.
Sounds like a good time.
He threw them both out, giving Q a black eye.
Also, can I just say, being on meth and then having Bubba come in and just scare the crap out of you has to be a terrifying experience. Like, just that whole, it's just got to be terrifying.
So Bubba was a very large man who could be violent and mean. But he also hired ex-cons and was sponsoring Bubba's Buddies event so that he could sell the meat at a discounted price.
Yeah.
He was accused of being cruel to animals,
Yeah.
but also of slowing production to use more humane methods.
Which makes no sense. Very contradictory.
Very contradictory. Manuel Q. Aldana was with Bubba until his arrest Sunday morning.
Yes.
He was released Monday and put back into custody 2 hours later with Pam's name on the order, even though she never gave the order.
Wait, can you repeat that one? I don't think I followed it.
So Manuel was released Monday morning
Yeah.
and then put back in custody 2 hours later.
Oh.
Pam's name was on the order, but she didn't do it.
And what day is Monday? I mean, how... Okay, that's a stupid question in retrospect. How close to 4th of July is Monday?
I believe we're on like the 12th and 13th, so we're like a week after.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to keep track of the two different time periods that has passed. Okay, interesting.
So Little Dipper was with Bubba until 3 a.m. Sunday morning, when he walked home alone, where he stayed until his probation officer arrived on Monday and took him to a safe house.
He seems like a good guy all around.
Little Dipper said he would rather kill than go back to jail.
Yeah.
And he was grateful to Bubba for giving him the job.
Yeah, he was.
Samantha Tipton was a Jill of all trades at the plant and last saw Bubba when she left work.
Yes.
She and Bubba started an affair after Ellie announced she was divorcing Bubba.
If I could whistle, I'd cat call.
Samantha was asleep when Bubba called and left the message. She found Bubba's remains, and she did not know that Bubba had changed his insurance beneficiary.
She was weird about seeing him all chopped up, right? I vaguely remember her not being too upset at first, and then it kind of hit her. Like, I remember it being odd.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
Ellie Fitzgerald, the soon-to-be ex, hadn't seen Bubba since she walked in on Bubba and Samantha having sex in his office the week before.
Sure. That's what she'd like us to believe.
Yep. She had announced the divorce to marry Antonio, and she was furious about the change in insurance, as it was the only real asset of value the couple had.
Neat.
Antonio last saw Bubba in the bar. After an arm wrestling match, he and Bubba spoke.
Yeah.
He said it was an apology for firing him. Q and Little Dipper said it was anything but friendly. Antonio was fired for stealing, but he claims the only thing he stole was Ellie. Antonio is strong and identifies as a nomad, the group locals called gypsies.
Yeah. Okay. What is going on here?
Dahlia last saw Bubba when he left her shop.
Uh-huh.
She disliked him and the way he disrespected her. They had met before at a bar where she gave him the idea for Bubba's buddies. Dahlia is also a nomad.
So it seems strange that she gave him the idea and then later got all offended by it. I think she gave him the idea. Okay, wait, I'll shut up and let you read the last point.
Michelle Montoya presented herself as a transfer from Dallas, except the real Michelle Montoya is still in Dallas.
So it's very clear the fake Michelle is one of the Nomad clan people.
Yep, so after slicing and dicing through all these clues, who should Pam hold responsible for Bubba's death?
So I'm going to just take a few names off the list really quickly. I don't think it's Little Dipper. I don't think it's Ellie. Little Dipper, he doesn't seem like the kind of person. He doesn't seem like he has much to gain. He didn't want to go to jail. But considering everyone else's reasoning, he also seems just like the lightest. Like his main motivation is just he doesn't want to go back to jail. And he didn't go back to jail anyway. So I don't think it's him. I don't think it's Ellie because I vaguely remember she didn't have the opportunity to do it, right? She was in Houston.
That is right. I forgot to put that in the notes. She was in Houston with her mom, visiting her aunt.
So she wasn't actually around to do anything. I think she's an important part because she's a huge part of what's the man's name that starts with an A?
Antonio.
I really wanted to call him Alejandro on accident. Antonio. She is a huge part of what Antonio uses to get what he wants. Michelle is she's a big part. I'm not sure that she's necessarily the mastermind and that she did it all. Because there's a couple instances where you can see she clearly had pull. For instance, when oh my God, I forgot his name again.
You or Antonio?
Antonio. Jeez, I don't know how I forgot it so quickly. But when Antonio was brought in, he wasn't handcuffed and that kind of stuff. And also, was he a prisoner?
Supposed to be, yeah.
That didn't make sense. What was he arrested for?
Loitering.
Yeah, that just seemed odd. It's an odd charge for him to have. They didn't really explain how he got arrested for that within this time frame, or how he got out. Because now he's out. They clearly saw him running around, and that was a day later.
Yep, you are accurate.
So he went from being a prisoner to being free, which makes no sense. If he was in full orange, how did he do that?
Don't know.
So I don't think he was fully a prisoner. I think they were both playing Pam. Because that whole situation just doesn't make sense to me, how he could have gotten in and out of there so quickly. Moreover, I think Pam should have seen him and gone, "What the hell? How are you out right now?" That would have been the huge question. So I think he's got a lot, but I don't think Michelle is the person who did it. She's definitely playing a role. But she's not the, point the finger at her. But she probably should still be arrested for impersonating a cop, obviously. At the very least, that's what she needs to be arrested for. Moving down the line, let's see who else is left. There's Q-Tip.
Yep.
Q-Tip, again, seems like he was more of a pawn. It seems like he was used. He clocked in and out, after he was arrested?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep.
So... he couldn't have done that, right? He could not have done that. So someone used him to get there. He had some motivation, but again, not nearly as strong as anyone else's. So I don't think it was him.
Samantha
is interesting because I think she possibly has a role in all this, but again, I don't feel as though she's the mastermind. She did get a whole $1 million out of this. So if the whole con that they're pulling is to get the $1 million, I mean, she would be a vital person, and if she's a part of that, then she nailed it, But also, she's been there for years, right?
Yes.
So it doesn't really seem like she's part of that pack. It didn't really mention how... Did it mention how recently Antonio? I can't remember that name for the life of me. It just slips me every time I say it. Does it mention how recently Antonio and Dahlia moved towards the area?
Said about a month ago.
About a month ago? So he got hired really quickly then.
Yeah.
and then fired really quickly all over again.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's clearly Antonio and Dahlia who are doing the majority of this. I think everyone else plays small roles. Michelle is part of the group. She got them access. Samantha's probably part of the group. I don't think Dipper and Q-Tip are. I think, again, they just got used. But yeah, Antonio and Dahlia. So I guess the question is what happened? That's the main question, is what has happened. So I think it is Dahlia convinced Frank to do Bubba's Buddies, specifically to either Frank was in on it and knew that he was giving the meat to the dogs, or he wasn't in on it and they knew that they were going to steal the meat from the dogs. It could have been insurance fraud, but no, it wasn't insured, was it?
They never filed a report or a
Yeah.
claim.
So maybe it was just a front and that's what he was telling people, and then it got stolen and he was like, oh no, it got stolen, but let's not tell anybody, because he didn't really actually care that it was stolen. The real question is, what kind of partnership exists here? Because I'm very confused by it. There's clearly some level of rage between Frank and
Fred. Bubba. Just call him Bubba.
Fred? I really
Fred,
thought his name was
Bubba.
Frank.
Fred Bubba Fitzgerald.
Fine, between Bubba and Antonio. But yeah, it seems like the big two are Antonio and Dahlia. And man, I'm not fully in on what the scheme even is.
Okay.
So we'll call it there and just figure it out.
We'll go to the wake up.
Yeah.
Wake up.
Nick, last chapter? Second to last chapter?
Second to last chapter.
Neat.
Pam awakened from a dead sleep to find a hand clamped over her mouth. Hot breath cascaded past her earlobe as a woman with an exotic voice harshly whispered, "Let this go, Pam. The world is better off. The man had to die for what he did to those dogs." Pam shot up and reached for the gun in her bedside drawer. No one was in the room. Only a bad dream. After getting dressed, the clock reading only 4 a.m, Pam made the drive over to Dahlia's psychic storefront. As she suspected, the building sat empty, abandoned, with the table and crystal ball still standing in the lobby, which she could view from the window. After a quick trek to the station, Pam made another drive to 1258 Montgomery Street, the listed address for Detective Michelle Montoya. The front door was locked. The back door was open. The home had no furniture inside, not even a couch to rest on or a bed to sleep in. Pam toured the entire home and did not find anything of value, so she just left, dejected, not knowing where to turn next. As she sat in her car at the red light, she remembered something Michelle had told her. She was the one that usually did the cheating. Huffing to herself, Pam pulled into a gas station and laid her head against the steering wheel. She felt so stupid for trusting her new partner, and a failure for not being able to solve the case. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. "What?" Pam said, raising her voice inside the quiet cab. She looked at the screen. Instead of calling, Peter had left a text. "Just dropped a friend off at the airport. That guy with the big hair is waiting for a flight. Thought you'd like to know." Pam did not take time to clear the screen. She dropped the phone into the passenger seat, threw the vehicle in gear, and accidentally hopped the curb as she sped out of the parking lot. Departure. Pam saw no sign of Q at any of the gates. She even had a gentleman check the restroom, which proved to be empty. Dejected, she sat in the cafe, sipping coffee, when a pair of strong hands gripped her shoulders, causing her to tense. "Surprise!" Antonio said from behind her. Pam looked up into the face of Dahlia the psychic as she took a seat to her left. The young woman had mesmerizing hazel eyes and looked inconspicuous in her jeans and plain white t-shirt. Hugh sat beside Dahlia. The man who sat in the interrogation room, no longer answering her questions, looked much different in his blue polo and black jeans. The pair took to holding hands. Antonio released her shoulders to take a seat on Pam's right. He smiled and slapped the table. "The gang's all here again. Isn't this exciting?" "Where's Ellie?" Pam said sourly. Antonio glanced over his shoulder to the gate awaiting embarkment that could be seen through a glass partition. Ellie sat facing away from them. Bubba's widow glanced over his shoulder and met the detective's eyes before quickly looking away. Michelle sat in the gate area beside Ellie, also facing the opposite direction. Dressed in one of her overly large sweaters, the woman Pam thought was her partner looked over his shoulder and gave a happy wave. "I guess you want to know what happened to Bubba," Antonio said, producing a cell phone. He pressed play and instantly turned the volume down when a group of voices poured over the speaker. The video showed the interior Fitzgerald meatpacking plant, where a group of 20 or 30 people were running out of the plant with arms full of meat wrapped in wax paper. Pam heard Q's panting voice as he ran out of the building along with everyone else. She did not have to be told that these were the gypsies who stole Bubba's meat and who skipped out on the rent at Copper Cove. The next video started with a shot of a paved parking lot. A woman's screams came through the speakers before the video panned to show Dahlia, veilless, her eyes watery and burning with rage. The video ended with the shot of a tray carrying a dozen hot dogs, all dressed up, with a dozen dog collars beside them bearing the same dog tags as the ones now housed in evidence. "Perla," Pam whispered. The third video began with a blood-splattered wall and the same scene depicted in the photograph stuffed into the folder at Pam's elbow. The screen panned over to the victim, Fred Bubba Fitzgerald, lying in a bloody heap on the floor. The nude man's body was composed of rolls of pale flesh. His face was purple and bloodied, and it soon became apparent why. Lanky Q ducked into the shot and smiled for the camera. "Hello, Detective McCarthy." "That's right. It was me. And trust me, this man deserves it. Let's see how he likes being turned into chopped meat, just like he did to my Perla. She was my baby. Dahlia's too." Q stepped back to reveal him standing over Bubba while gripping an aluminum baseball bat. He tossed the bat aside where it rattled noisily against the pavement. He walked out of shot and returned, with chains rattling. Q shackled Bubba's ankles and walked off the screen when a mechanism activated, which hoisted the wounded Bubba into the air, upside down. Bubba thrashed and groaned, but it was clear that he was either too drunk or wounded to speak with any clarity. The chain moving along the conveyor, which pulled the victim out of view. Footsteps on the cement floor preceded Q, picking up the cell phone and positioning it on a tripod for a better view. Bubba was now suspended over the shocking pool. More footsteps as Q raced behind the controls. The chains that held Bubba descended him into the pool. The moment the fat man's fingertips touched the water, his face contorted, his body convulsed. Q worked the controls on the panel in the view of camera, which made Bubba rise out of the water before he was dipped a second time, then a third. Water dripped from Bubba's bloodied head and smashed nose as the man sputtered, trying to clear his airway. "Stop this!" he managed to shout with such intensity that his voice cracked, which made Q roar with laughter. After dunking Bubba a few more times, Q changed course, moving the victim further down the conveyor. Bubba's murderer had repositioned the phone again to show Bubba's throat perilously close to a stilled bandsaw meant to slice through an animal's throat. Bubba screamed for help, which sounded more like an animal wailing. The blade whirled to life and bit into Bubba's neck, ripping away flesh and muscle amid a spray of blood. The victim's screams became painful shrieks as Q began pushing Bubba's bulk, causing his body to sway, the way one might nudge a child on a swing set. Bubba let loose a high-pitched wail as the saw dug a deep, bloodied groove to the back of his head. Pam looked away as the grating sounds of the saw and flesh poured through the tiny speakers. When she looked back at the screen, a whirring of separate mechanisms revealed that Q was lowering Bubba back down to the cement floor. The man's upper body bore a series of thick lacerations, each one bloodier than the last. Antonio reappeared in the shot with a reciprocating saw that he used to saw open Bubba's belly, causing his stout frame to shiver violently amid shrieks of pain. Pam looked away again. When she glanced back, it took her only a moment to realize what Q had in his hand. At first, it looked to be a length of rope dripping the blood so dark it resembled motor oil. But then she saw the glistening purple tissue and knew what it must be. Q positioned the phone in front of the industrial meat grinder set into the floor. He tucked one end of Bubba's intestines between the blades before moving over to the controls. The heavy blades rolled against each other, pulling more of the gut's length into the jaws. Q watched with abject pleasure as the machine continued to feed its rolling gears now stained crimson. The camera panned over to show a foot, then a pale, flabby leg it was attached to, slowly moving toward the grinder, all on its own. Antonio stopped the video before making a performance out of deleting all three. Pam's hand crept to her firearm as she started to rise. Antonio said, placing a hand on Pam's arm. The way he looked into her eyes made her relax, and her hand fell away from her sidearm. "You're going to let this go, Detective," he told her. "We're going to Spain to get back to our roots. You call us gypsies, but we are Gitana, a tight clan. We do what we need in order to survive." He leaned closer and whispered, "As far as you're concerned, Bubba did kill himself. He was depressed. He didn't fight much. He lost everything, including his will to live." Pam gave a shake of her head. "He was going to run away with the secretary, start a new life. He had plans." The detective turned her attention to Q, her hand once more finding the butt of her firearm. "I want you to get down on the ground slowly," he told the murderer. Antonio snapped his fingers and met her gaze. "Look at me," he told the detective. "Let this go." Pam took her hand away from her gun and laid it gently on the table. She could not control herself. Something about the way Antonio directed her made her want to comply. "Why?" she asked. "Why go to all the trouble with Michelle pretending to be a detective?" "It's what we do," Antonio said. "We move in, play the system. We only moved here a month ago. After Bubba fired me, I admit I held a grudge. I took his lady, took some meat, but he showed such weakness in the face of it all. As Gitana, we are raised to show strength, no matter what. We abhor weakness. That's why I hated Q here after he started doing drugs. I figured he wasn't good enough for my sister. If I could get rid of Bubba and send Q to prison at the same time, I'd be happy. I knew Q would be easy to sway once his dogs were killed." Pam looked over at Q, who showed no discomfort at all about being talked about in his very presence. Antonio indicated across the table at his sister's boyfriend. "Q and I had our differences, but he's quit the drugs, so we're cool now, so this can all go away." "It doesn't work like that," Pam said. "Oh, but it does," Antonio said, showing all his straight teeth. "It was all me. I had Bubba believe he had to kill the dogs to get back at us nomads for the theft of his meat. By killing Q's precious angels, I knew he'd go along with killing Bubba. But now I take it all back. Q and I are fine, so it's over now." "A man lost his life," Pam blurted. "A weak man. A man the world does not need." Pam shook her head. "Bubba was a good man by all accounts. A conscientious man." She looked in Michelle's direction. "Those supposed claims of animal abuse were bogus, made up by Michelle. Realize that now. Bubba was depressed because he cared at one time for his wife, cared for his business, hated what he did to those dogs. That's why he called you a cancer that night. You destroyed everything he cared about over a grudge." Antonio shrugged, unperturbed. "The videos are deleted. You have no proof of anything." "I can get those videos back," Pam said. "Forensic video technicians can't." Antonio waved a hand through this air. Our flight's boarding. Q and Dahlia started to rise. When Pam put her hand on her gun, Antonio touched her arm and looked directly into her eyes, causing her to lower her hand once more. That's how you got Bubba to kill those dogs. What is this? A superpower? Antonio looked across to his sister, all three of the nomads rising to their feet. Dahlia has her clairvoyance, and I'm incredibly persuasive. Dahlia conceived of Bubba's buddies, basically serving up the meat you all stole. And then you destroyed his marriage, his life, and you taunted him by putting that dog tag in his back pocket when you hugged him Saturday night. Pam grunted with disgust. You're not getting that life insurance payout you were expecting, you know, Pam said, nodding in Ellie's direction. Antonio's brows furrowed as he looked over at his mistress. That's right, Pam said. Bubba left everything to his secretary. Antonio smiled as he joined Dahlia and Q on the other side of the table. He wrapped an arm around his sister's shoulders and said, with our abilities, money is never an object. We'll be fine. Have a good life, detective. If you're ever in Spain, be sure to look us up. Dahlia stayed behind while the others headed toward the TSA line. Pam said, if you're psychic, didn't you see all this happening? Didn't you know Antonio would kill your prized dog? Dahlia adopted a sad expression. Of course I saw it all. I also didn't like that Q was using drugs. Because of his meth use, we were on a course to split up. I did some of my best acting the day Bubba laid that hot dogs at our door. But now Q is clean. So as a couple, we're better off than we ever were. The psychic looked over his shoulder. As for Antonio, he promised to buy me a new dog. I never could say no to Antonio. Dahlia leaned close and whispered, Don't worry, detective. You're not going to pass until you're old and gray. Also, Peter's a good one, and he is really sorry. You two had something special. He misses you, dearly. Pam did her best to remain stoic as she watched Dahlia join the others. The trio walked through security without the officials giving them a second glance. As Antonio approached Ellie's chair at the gate, the pair embraced before sharing a passionate kiss. The nomads and Ellie all stood in line with the other passengers waiting to board. That's when Pam noticed another familiar face standing among them. Samantha Tipton, Bubba's secretary and mistress, looked back at Pam briefly before slipping through the door into the gangway. The waitress came over and asked Pam if she wanted something besides coffee. Pam saw the gate area beyond the partition lay empty. The nomads were gone. Can I have a salad? She asked. No meat, and a whiskey. A double, please. After the waitress walked away, Pam silently broke down, her tears dripping into her lukewarm coffee. She slipped her phone out of her pocket to find that she had missed 13 calls from Peter. And that is precisely who she began to call. The end.
Well, you knew it was going to be nice and screwed up, but...
So let's talk about who didn't do it.
No one.
Little Dipper.
Little Dipper. I knew he didn't do it. I was wrong about everyone else, but wow.
No, you saw the conspiracy.
Yeah.
You just weren't exactly sure how the pieces fit together.
Well, and it really did feel like one of those, man, everyone did it. I'm actually more surprised that Dipper didn't do it. You know? That he wasn't somehow manipulated. But, like, it's strange because it's like, yes, everyone was able to work against their own values and their own morals because they were manipulated. And unless you can see that, it's really hard to say this person believes in this, so they would hate that person if they killed their dog because no, they were manipulated. Yes, that person killed their dog, but they don't hate him anymore. So yeah, it's very difficult.
I thought it was a little, I don't know if you want to call it odd or challenging, that Antonio was really behind the dog killing.
Yeah, well, we kind of knew he was behind the dog killing. Well, the issue was, again, how is he behind the dog killing? Because until you really register that he has the ability to like persuade people,
Yeah.
you're like, how is he working all sides? Because he did. He worked every single side. And that's, where most of their power comes from, is that they can be on every side. They can switch people to their sides. They can make people say, you killed the dog that I raised, but, it was so that I could be with my girlfriend and we could be stronger together.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah. It's
I did not pick
definitely
up,
complicated.
Yeah, I did not pick up that Q was also a new hire. It did say that, didn't it? And I just didn't really pick up on that.
I don't know if that got really specific. And this was a well-crafted, well-layered one, because when the hotel leasing agent was describing the guy with Dahlia, it was clearly Q. It was
Really?
like the fuzzy-haired guy.
I don't think I even remember him describing another person.
I figured you didn't catch it based on what you were thinking through the analysis.
Yeah.
I remember the parts like that were grossing us out, like where
Yeah.
Michelle was about to use her ungloved hand to...
Yeah.
It's because she was not a cop.
Yeah. And there were actually, looking back, there are a lot of clues that she's not a cop.
Yeah.
Which those are really cleverly placed, because it made you go, why did she do that? And then, someone who's more, not inept. What's the opposite of inept? Ept? Someone who's more ept would catch up on that,
Well, sometimes you catch things, but you don't know what they mean. Because you definitely caught it from the beginning. That's what this whole story has been.
That's weird. No, know what it means, but it's weird.
But it's weird.
Yep. And so, yeah, there's a couple of these stories where you just get to the end and you're like, man, I don't know. I need the author to explain it to me real quick.
And this in full Jason Little mode was horror.
Yes.
And I'm sure a few people had to turn this one off. But thanks to everybody who sticked around. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's a good mystery.
Yeah, it's a really good reveal at the end there, too, because it also just makes you feel so helpless.
Yeah.
I mean, she desperately wants. And the worst part is you find out that Bubba is just an innocent dude. He's like 98% innocent.
So his real crime, I'm using air quotes, crime, was firing Antonio.
Yes, it was just a grudge. It was just a small spite. And it also makes you realize these are actually really terrible people, because basically their word goes and their word becomes the law. Whatever their opinion is how reality will play out, but for better or for worse. And that's what we saw here. This is just a guy who got on the wrong side of a dude and his entire life was ruined.
Yeah.
And again, what's even more interesting is seeing all of like his like people just follow them into this new area. Like, did Ellie really actually love Antonio, or was that the more of the manipulation? It's pretty easy to say manipulation.
It is. If it was pure manipulation to get back at Bubba, you would think that Antonio wouldn't be taking Ellie with him.
Exactly. That's true. Actually.
I don't know why, but you got to think the same thing with Samantha.
Yeah. Samantha, I feel like that one was for the money.
Yeah, I feel like that one was
Ellie
for the money.
is harder to pinpoint, but he didn't even seem that attached to her when they were there. She just sat across the room, which that just might have been how it was written. But yeah. That's a really good story. It makes you think. That's one you can unpack for a while.
Yes.
Those are the fun ones that you can just sit and think about for 20 minutes afterwards and just go, yeah. You just do that for 20 minutes.
So a little bit about Jason. So he is a Texas-based fiction writer known for crafting dark, suspense-driven stories with sharp twists and unforgettable endings. His work spans horror, mystery, and psychological thrillers, with a focus on stories that linger long after the final line, just like Jack said. He is a recurring contributor to Mysteries to Die For, where his stories challenge listeners to solve the mysteries before the truth is revealed. For readers who want more, Jason publishes exclusive horror stories, longer-form fiction, and behind-the-scenes content that is always written by a human, never AI, on his Patreon at From the Fright Vault. Now, let's get to know Jason a little more. Jack recently had the opportunity to connect with Jason and ask probing questions like only Jack can do.
I begged you to rephrase that. I begged you to rephrase that.
You did. You did, and I intentionally accidentally forgot.
Yeah, sure. So now, ladies and gentlemen, here is my exclusive interview with Jason Little. All right, listeners, we are here now with our esteemed author of this episode, Jason Little. He wrote us this episode, so it's very exciting to be able to have him on the show. And so we're going to start off right here with a nice, strong question that, ties pretty closely to a lot of the content we've seen from you so far, which what draws you so strongly to the horror genre?
Yeah, good question. Thanks for having me, by the way. I love Mysteries of Diaspora. I love writing for you guys. With horror, I have a deep love for horror. I grew up on horror pretty much. Those adults that don't know how to relate to kids, pretty much.
Yeah.
I was surrounded by them. So, like, my parents let me watch Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Children of the Corn when I was 5. I went to visit an aunt and uncle, and my aunt was like, "Oh, you like to read? Here's Cujo." And that book set me off on a tear. I had to consume everything Stephen King. That was in 3rd grade. So I pretty much I read so many Stephen King books growing up, and other horror books that I have a deep love for horror.
You got started quick in life.
Yes, I did. Yeah. I was raised on the horror genre. As a matter of fact, when you go to my mom's house, she'll always have a horror movie on. So it was always horror or something in my house. But other than that, like as a horror writer, horror is one of those things I've always said. If you want to know how somebody really is, like we wear all these masks to work and at home, and we try to pretend that life is, cozy. We have our houses and our locks on our doors. But if you want to know how somebody really is, scare them. I don't know if you've ever seen those videos that are set up on a street corner and somebody's dressed as like a hedge and he jumps out. Even the biggest dudes start screaming like a little girl, or the littlest women get up and, ready to fight. So I always say it'll strip away everything. You really scare people. And I just love that about horror and terror and the genre.
You just have horror genre stuff playing all the time? Does that not just raise your resting heart rate constantly?
Pretty much, yeah. If I'm watching a movie, it's going to be a horror movie. If I'm reading a book, like right now, I'm a Nick Cutter fan. I've been reading a couple of his. I love the horror genre. Does it scare me? Not necessarily. I'm more like, where's the writer going to go with this? And it just does keep me riveted, though. But I wouldn't say that I'm really scared anymore. But never say never. I'm hoping there will be a book or a movie that comes out, or that will terrify me. But yeah, I just love horror so much. It's always playing or always reading. Yeah.
Wow. Well, within that horror theme, are there any themes or horror tropes that you find yourself returning to over and over again as an author?
Yeah, I love horror that makes a reader say, oh, this could happen to me. The Final Destination stuff. I love those movies so much because those are things that can actually happen. It goes to the log truck. I think anybody who's seen those movies will not drive anywhere near a log truck. So if, as a horror writer, if you can make people change their behavior, even just a little way, like remember your story and say, oh, I'm not going to stick my hand in the garbage disposal this time, or something like that. Like, I feel I've done my job as a writer, but I love those so much that even like supernatural horror or psychological horror, for me, it has to leave the reader with something like, oh, this could happen to me. That's what I keep returning to. I love it so much.
Wow. Now, on this podcast, you've written about infanticide and grinding dogs into sausages. Do you have any kind of lines in the sand you're just unwilling to cross?
Not really. As long as it applies to the story, I will go as far. I don't want it to be clickbaity or just for the sake of grossing people out. It has to be applicable to the story. But actually, I don't like dogs or pets or even animals or kids being harmed. I don't like that. I listen to Sword and Scale, which is a true crime podcast, and there's so many stories about the kids that it's so hard to listen to. And with pets, like animals, I was reading Nick Cutter's The Deep, and I've read and written about so many horrific things being done to people, but in that book, a dog gets its ear torn off, and that made me go, "Oh no, the dog!" So, because it's the innocence, adults may deserve what they get, you never know, but kids and animals, they're innocent, they don't deserve any of that. So I don't really like that. The infanticide, notice how the baby was in good hands. I mean, it was dangled over a roof and a bridge, but nothing happened to the baby. The dogs were turned into hot dogs, but we didn't see the nitty gritty. We just saw the final product, which is a little more easier to stomach, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, it's still interesting to hear that like those lines more exist as like a context of it's got to mean something for it to happen for you to write about it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want it to be exploitative for the sake of just being clickbait.
Yeah. Now, your bio mentions that you use a lot of real life struggles to fuel your stories, and you've kind of already mentioned a little bit of this. What experiences have influenced your stories, and which stories have they influenced?
Yeah, in Right Hand, Dripping Blood Red, the main character is a cocky kid who, wins all the tournaments. That was based on real life. It was a kid that was in Taekwondo with me named Dimitri. He was Russian. And just like that character, and he was boastful, and that was kind of drawn from that, from people like not liking him because he was so boastful and everything. And but in Safe Haven, where he's bickering with his mom, that's definitely from real life. My mom and I bicker like that. But and then in Safe Haven, also, like his family, he lost his family. That came from really like not. I didn't lose my family in a car wreck, but I was divorced, and so that kind of took away from that. But all my stories involve a little bit of slice of life from my life, like the gypsies. Even I was a manager of a movie theater in Houston, and one of my employees was this little old lady, and she called me to the front desk. It was real slow, and I said, "What's going on?" She goes, "Gypsies are here." Like she said it whispery, just like Samantha did in that story. And I thought it was the craziest thing I've ever heard. I said, "Gypsies, come on." But it's real. I remember in the news in Houston, they would rush into grocery. They said nomads would rush into grocery stores and rush out with goods, and there were so many of them they couldn't stop them. And then I worked at an apartment complex there where some did live, and they were doing the car fix. I'll fix your car for less than the body shop, and they take the money. And I had my cell phone stolen by a kid that came in, and his grandma apologized, but I never got my phone back. So that is based on a real life situation, the gypsies and nomads. So yeah, and I on my Patreon I have stories that write about being jealous of a coworker, and raising kids, but also dating, trying to, in the Ashen Rose, trying to fulfill your adult needs, while taking care of your kids. And so yeah, it's all taken from life. I would say every story I write at least has a little bit from my life.
Wow, that's definitely a good way to kind of express yourself. So I can definitely see like a bit of the catharsis that you could get out of that.
Most definitely. I do see writing as a form of therapy. It's weird how I'm not even conscious of it sometimes when I write like a paragraph, and I'll go back and I'll go, "Oh yeah, that happened to me a long time ago." And it is like I'm layering out those traumas, and sometimes getting it out helps. And so if I can do it in a fiction manner where I'm not pouring my heart out to a therapist or the world, I'm kind of masking it in fiction, horror fiction. Yeah, it does the job. It's very cathartic.
Wow, yeah. Now, the majority of your works are short form, which you kind of just talked about with some of your Patreon work, and they're kind of consumable on social media, podcasts, and quick reads online. What freedoms or limitations draw you to this format? And furthermore, have you ever considered writing long form content, such as like a full book, which I know you just mentioned the novel earlier?
Yeah, yeah, good question. Yeah, I love short form fiction because, especially in our world right now, where people's attention spans are so limited. We're in the TikTok era where if you don't grab somebody's attention in 2 seconds, they're gone. And if you want to introduce somebody's writing, I always point to, when it comes to a short story, "The Egg" by Andy Weir. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's one of my favorite short stories, and I've told so many people about it. If you want to go read this story, and it's easily digestible. You can do it in a sitting. If you wanted to introduce a writer to somebody, I think that's the best way. And so I've always felt I wanted to get good at, not only I have flash writes, which are about 1,600 characters or less, very short. They have a beginning, middle, and end. 3 to 10,000 words for a monthly story that I write every month. And then I am working on a novel right now. But I feel like to get good at a novel, because it's easy to meander with a novel, it's easier to go off the rails with subplots and all this. With a short story, you have to be concise. You have to get good at, having that whip snap ending. And if I can get good at that, I think I will be good at writing a novel. And I've always wanted to have a constant go of having projects on my plate at one time. And so having a real short story, medium short story, and a novel going helps fulfill that dopamine rush that comes with finishing a project. It's so easy to say, I'm a writer. Oh, what are you working on? A novel. Oh, okay. Everyone says they have a novel in them, but to have, finished pieces that you can show people is much easier to do with short form fiction than with a novel, because it's so easy, to go off the rails. But the limitations with short form fiction is you can't draw people in slowly and scare them deep down like you can in a novel, especially with horror fiction. But so that's where the limitations go. But I think the freedoms are much more there with short form than with the novel.
So it sounds like you have a lot of projects in the works. And on top of that, you're also one of the few authors to write for Mysteries to Die For who actually does write for a living. So how does your day job, writing copy and refining some written content, contribute to your creative writing?
That's a good question. As far as writing marketing and sales copy, it involves the same thing. The emotions. You want to get people's emotions involved. If you're writing about like an Italian restaurant, you want people to feel the way that the smell, the spices in the air, to taste the spices, the comfort of the restaurant, the music, the ambiance. Same thing. If you're describing a scene, you want the emotions involved. But also with writing marketing and sales copy, you have to be really concise. Again, it's about brevity, the economy of words. Every word matters. You don't want a lot of filler words like of, the, and so on, as you want to make it punchy words that matter, that will, make the sentence stand out, sentence to sentence. But the biggest thing that it does is clients, when they order a project, they don't care if you're inspired. They don't care if you want to get to work. They expect their project. So I was a big procrastinator growing up. I always wanted to be a writer. Ever since reading Stephen King, I was like, that's what I want to do for a living. But so many years went by where I wasn't writing because it's so daunting writing a novel, say. And so I would put it off, and I'd have on my hard drive. I'm sure a lot of writers can relate, where you have, this is the final copy. No, this is the final copy. Final copy, where it ends, and then you step away from it, come back, and try again. But writing for a living, you have to get to work, and you have to have a rough draft that's as close to the final draft as possible for the client by the deadline. And so it's really taught me just to buckle down and get to work.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about your background? It sounds like you've been writing for most of your life. What kind of technical training have you had?
Not really. I'm self-taught, really. I did, just an avid reader growing up, which really helped with spelling, sentence structure, being able to emulate the writers that I read, and I'm really self-taught. But of course, I read a lot online, as far as what the trends are and things. But I don't have any per se technical training as far as courses or anything like that.
That's really impressive in that case. I would have, with the way you've talked, I would have guessed you must have, had years in college. That's very impressive.
I went to college, but not for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll end on a fun one. If you could commit any crime and get away with it, what would it be?
That's a good question. It would definitely be a bank robbery, or really like finding a Brinks bag on the road, or maybe a Brinks guy is taking a coffee break and he's not paying attention and just taking that, because that's FDIC insured, right? There's no real victim. Somebody may lose their job, but when one door closes, another opens. So I'll be rich and they'll find a new job. So win-win. I think it would be some kind of victimless crime, as weird as it may say, me being a horror writer. But yeah, I like, I want that money, but no guns blazing. It would have to be something like finding a bag of Brinks money on the side of the road or something.
Yeah. Yeah, one that helps you more financially and realistically.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll end off with this one. Do you have any projects that you're currently working on or releasing soon?
I do. I have my Flash Sprite. It's comes out every Friday. A new Flash Sprite, which they range everywhere from supernatural to Final Destination horror to everything that you could imagine. That's me doing reps in the horror realm, just coming up with a quick story that's 1,600 characters or less. My Patreon From the Fright Vault also has a monthly fright, which is a longer short story for $3 a month if you want to subscribe. And then I'm working on my novel Narcolepsy, which delves into horror, supernatural mythology, and it's a longer work, which is actually book one, so it's going to be a series. I actually let my friend Ken Harris read it, and it was 400,000 words was the first draft. And he goes, maybe you want to break this up? And I said, yeah, and that's where that meandering goes that I was talking about. So very easy to do. But that Narcolepsy is expected to come out at the end of the year, or at least I'll be shopping publishers by the end of the year. Right now it's on ice. I finished a draft, and so it's on ice right now as I kind of process and before I get back to it.
Wow, we're looking forward to it. And out of curiosity, I'm pretty sure I saw that you did sign up to come onto the podcast again for season 10, right? Right?
I did. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
We're looking forward to it too. Yours are always so interesting. They're always never anything we're expecting.
I
And
really
you
appreciate
proved
that.
it again in this episode. You proved that again. No
Thank
one
you,
was
thank you.
expecting hot dogs. Well, dog hot dogs.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, I'm very impressed with the level of care that you and TG put into the stories. Like, you get down to the littlest detail and you catch all the jokes. Like that bitch joke, like, I like that. I was laughing. I was like, oh, you got it. And like pig, like, how could she sleep with and the pig for the next section? You guys get that. And and you're playing music at the same time, which is very impressive. So I'll say the same thing. I love what you and TG have put together. And I'm honored to be interviewed by you, and I'm honored to be on the show, and honored to be invited for season 10. I can't wait. I came up with this story idea the minute I read the email, and I can't wait to run with it.
All right. Well, listeners, we have not actually released the theme for the next season, and I don't think we're gonna do it here, but I can tell you it's gonna be pretty fun. It's gonna be, as I said in the email that I sent out, it's gonna be the podcast season that's gonna make us the best top podcast on the world, on the planet. So definitely check it out and come back to see Jason's next episode and go check out all of his works. And so, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a blast to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's been real fun. Great to meet you, finally.
I know. It's always funny that we come and talk to all of our writers. I always talk to them in the stories. I don't know what anyone looks like, and I'm finally discovering that through this process.
Yeah, it's fun. I was thinking that today. I was like, I've heard you talk so much. You've never heard me talk, but I've heard you on countless episodes. So it's kind of a weird. You're like going in here blind, but I already know like your cadence and everything. The way you sound is funny.
Well, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to learn a little bit more about Jason, stick around for the rest of the episode, and TG will explain where you can follow him and all that jazz. So thank you very much, and back to the episode.
Thank you, Jack.
And welcome back. I hope you liked the interview, fellas. For us, it was about 2 seconds of pause there. Yeah. So I hope you learned all sorts of things about him. I don't know what you learned. I haven't actually done the interview yet. Yeah, that's in the future for me.
Mysteries to Die For is proud to have Jason as one of our episode writers. We look forward to every one of his stories and always expect the unexpected. Again, check out his website, jasonlittlewriting.com, and his Patreon, From the Fright Vault, for more of Jason's storytelling. So that wraps up this episode of Mysteries to Die For. Support our show by subscribing and telling a mystery lover about us. And check out our website, m2d4podcast.com, for links to this season's authors and our socials on Facebook and Instagram. Mysteries to Die For is hosted by TG Wolff and Jack Wolff. Finely Ground Karma was written by Jason Little. Music and production are by Jack Wolff. Episode art is by TG Wolff. Join us next week for a toe tag, which is the first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, and thriller genre. And then come back in 2 weeks for our next original story, where motion. Where motion is our sticky means of murder. It's Time to Die by TG Wolff. an adaptation of The Mystery of the Downs by John Watson and Arthur J. Reese. All right, Jack, take us out.